T95 dual-wield magic weapons have helped out in quite a few rotations, and for doing hybrid kerapac kills, farming out that GP per hour, there is no exception here. And today I'm going to be updating that guide. So if you want a more in-depth explanation on how this method actually works, I will be leaving the video linked in the description below, as today I'm just going to be talking about how these new dual-wield weapons have impacted kerapac in a hybrid scenario. Real quick, if you want to go above and beyond supporting this channel memberships are enabled and the benefits with each tier are listed out. And on not the last video, but the video before that, we had our first super thanks on the channel. So thank you to Invictus9222, your support is greatly appreciated. And with all that being said, let's actually get into this update. So obviously these are magic weapons. They aren't really going to be affecting anything with the melee portions of the kill, which are phase 1, 3, and the first part of phase 4. The main thing I have found the weapon special attack specifically useful for, which if you want some more in-depth detail on how this passive and special attack and how general magic rotations work, I do have another video out for that. It will also be linked in the description. But I have noticed it is allowing me to skip the slam attacks much more consistently on phase 2, where we're using sunshine and metamorph, because this bleed is boosted by metamorph itself. And I have changed up my pre-build slightly. There are some rooms for improvisation based on what adrenaline you get, but overall it has made skipping these slams a lot more consistent on phase 2. On phase 4, I have found it to be kind of a waste unless you're going for specifically a wand reset, but I find using tendrils into just an omni power Iben more than enough to deal with phase 4 quickly, at least for the third echo and for kerapac himself on the last 200k. Now I'll go ahead and talk about some things that I have tried. I haven't been able to get them to work, but maybe y'all in the comments will be able to try something different. So I'll list out an alternative rotation that I have tried so far, and that was to use sunshine on phase 1 to skip the melee slams, and I was able to do it after about 10 minutes of kind of futzing around with rotations and whatnot. And the idea here is if I can sun meta P3, I can just instantly Zerk and I don't have to deal with the Zerk cooldown problems that this kind of buggy time warp presents. And so that way I could potentially get faster kills, but the issue that I ran into there was getting time warp to work correctly on phase 2 and phase 3, because we're killing kerapac so fast that the time warp cooldown is not ready. It's not even close to ready by the time we get to phase 3. And I did have an idea of trying to get sunshine to clear 2 separate phases, but I don't think it's quite strong enough to do so. And we do need the time warp to allow metamorph inside of sunshine, because they do stack together. So that's what, 112 or 116% damage increase, something like that. I can't remember the quick math off the top of my head, but maybe there is some absolute big brain out there who can figure out how to do a sunshine and make it last for 2 phases rather than 1, so that way you're saving on a time warp usage. I believe there are rotations with range specifically that allow it to last for 2 phases under 1 time warp. So maybe later on I'll try and experiment with something like that, where say I Zerk phase 1 like I normally do, range P2 and P3 all under 1 time warp, and then go through my normal phase 4, but then that's turning into a tribrid setup, not so much a hybrid setup. It could be something fun to look into in the future, but again, these are just things I have kind of thought about and have tried so far, not really gotten them to work, but I want to put this information out there because maybe one of y'all will hear it and be able to think of something creative with it. So feel free to go test yourselves and let me know in the comments down below what you have found out so far or tested or have seen from something else. But the last part of the rotation that has changed is my startup for phase 2. I no longer use any of the bleeds when I swap over to magic, because I don't want the wand spec to reset, because if you use a bleed you automatically get a stack, and the reason for not wanting this wand spec to proc and be able to be used again is I want it to get buffed by metamorph, and if I'm using it during the pre-building part, so to speak, where I've got sunshine down, I'm letting time warp do its thing and it has its 10-second window that I'm waiting for, metamorph isn't going to be up and the wand spec isn't going to be be boosting its damage from Sunshine. It's only Metamorph that it's getting a buff from. So now what I do is when phase 2 starts, I will hit Time Warp and wait a tick, then do Sunshine, and then go into a Gricko swap. Now what I've done so I can actually use Gricko with a mage swap is here on my mage bar, I have Gricko here. And if you'll notice on this bar, which is normally just my range like EOFs and switches bar for like everything else, what I've done is I actually have the melee weapon on this thumb button and I have the staff on this one. So I can go ahead and Gricko spec get my adrenaline per usual. I have my staff bound right here, and when I go back to it, the nice thing is that magic no longer has unique abilities for either staff or dual wield, or two-hand and dual wield, I should say. So with staff equipped, you can go into a Gricko, just swap back to your staff. It's a single input, and then you can just go ahead and hit Gricko Nami FSOA spec. And this is where some of the improv goes into play, because if I get a lot of adrenaline from the Gricko, like if I'm at like 20 after my sun and I shoot up to like anything above 70, 75 really, I'm going to not hit greater concentrated blast after I hit my Gricko. I'm just immediately going to go into Nami, the FSOA spec, and if I have the adrenaline, I'll hit wand spec after that, and then swap to my dual wields and hit something like combust. Because the wand spec is already active, we don't have to worry about this one proccing or not. The combust is just nice because the wand spec does give combust extra damage. And I've seen this at kerapac towards the end of a task bleed for like 2200s, and that's without a lunging swap. So it'll be crazy once these are dieable to see what type of damage I can get with combust, but I digress. Now, sometimes you won't be able to do the Nami FSOA spec into a wand orb spec or a wand spec into a combust. You won't have the adrenaline for it. And this is where I'm basically just going to move G-Conk around to wherever I need it to help with adrenaline. Sometimes I might hit Nami FSOA spec and I won't have the adrenaline for the wand spec, so I'll just hit G-Conk into the wand spec, and then that's when the time warp is going to proc, and just go into a metamorph there, and maybe I'll hit combust into like auto G-Conk or something. Sometimes you won't get any adrenaline at all, and the most important thing in my opinion to get off is the Nami and the FSOA spec. If you can't get off the wand spec, it's not the end of the world for phase 2. You can implement it after you start metamorph, but it is technically ideal to get it off beforehand because the wand spec takes a while to actually bleed out the damage. So if you do it before you press your metamorph on the time warp refresh, you'll still get quite a damage buff, and you're not using that GCD while metamorph is up. And because metamorph only lasts like 15 seconds, it's very important to optimize what global cooldowns you're actually using under metamorph and getting those abilities the extra buffed damage. All right, I think that is enough yapping and talking about all of the things that I have tried and the differences in rotation. Let's just actually go ahead and run an example kill. Real quick, I believe in the old guide I was using Zerk Fury with Font of Life, and at this point I really haven't been running into too many damage check problems, and I really appreciate the damage reduction that Death Ward gives. So I just run this relic setup the entire time. If you're really trying to crack out a PB, you can go ahead and use Zerk Fury Font of Life if you're going for a PB, but if you just want more repeatable consistency in this rotation, then I would just go with Death Ward, Fury the Small, and Conservation of Energy. All right, we're going to go ahead and pop our Majrat aura, make sure our Grim is active. Now, there might be some subtle differences between this current rotation that I'm going to do in this example and the one that I gave in the hybrid kerapac guide itself. And my rotations do change from time to time. I am very much a improv player. I am not so much a stringent follow an exact rotation player. So if you notice any differences in rotation, try out whatever works best for you, but I'm just going to call it as I do it in the heat of the moment, so to speak. All right, that's enough talking. Let's actually run through an example kill. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my D-back spec here, equip my Gricko switch, grab some adrenaline, go ahead and install our incendiary. We have 7 minutes on darkness, so we don't need to redo it at this point. Get 100% and go through the portal. Go ahead and click start, dive as far as you can and drop the combat dummy. Release your stall into a Natty Instinct, hit piercing, Gricko with your melee dual wield equip, anticipate, Zerk, surge 1 tick later, barge, chaos roar, dive over, stall a claw, and release the claw with an assault, and hit a few more, basically until this natty timer runs out. And here I'm going to go ahead and hit G Fury into a Lang spec, hit another basic for funsies, Meteor Strike, Greco, and then here I'm just going to hit a Hurricane, swap over to magic and start building with a G-Conk, D-Breath, and an Impact. And here I'm going to wait, Time Warp, wait a tick, and then Smoke Cloud into a Sunshine. We got another Relent proc, which is very strong, so we can hit our Nami, FSOA spec into a Wand spec, and maybe even a D-Breath. Run under and hit Metamorph, G-Conk into a Tendrils, into an Omnipower and G-Conk that should phase here. If not, just hit another couple abilities. We got the phasing there, so we'll just charge up a Detonate, equip our two-hander, release the Detonate with an auto attack and a Nami, maybe hit a couple of abilities here, swap over to our melee. Desi, walk out to the side and back, anticipate, Time Warp the Zerk, barge and run under. Lead the assault, hit Chaos Roar into a Claw, maybe another Claw spec. Chaos Roar again, hit another D-Claw. You want to be relatively high adren here, and you want to kind of wait out this portion because of the aforementioned Zerk cooldown problems with Time Warp. But we're at high adrenaline, we're starting phase 4, and we can just immediately go into a Zerk, target cycle barge, put on our other rings so we have perfect accuracy here, bleed the assault and just basic up from this point, eat food as necessary, dive over to the second echo, hit Lang spec into an overpower, he should die pretty quickly, maybe another basic will persuade him, there we go, surge over to the last guy, hit our disrupt shield, meteor strike, equip our other ring, Greco swap with a dual wield equip. I usually hit a couple basics here and then Time Warp, and then use a pot with my G-Conk into a Devotion. I can remember the ability names. And here I'm just going to hit an ability and Metamorph into a G-Conk, another Devotion, Limitless into a Tendrils, hit an Omnipower and an Iban, and this should be the kill. It wasn't, but it is what it is. Now, something you'll notice is on the old guide, I was getting 230 as an average, and that was counting like from beginning of task to end of task. This is the very beginning of this Slayer task, and I'm already at a 233. The big limiting factor I'm having right now is waiting for phase 3 to not go too quickly, so that way I can start Zerk on this echo here. Now, something I should also mention is all of these weapons are tier 100s. I do have the innate mastery from the Shard of Genesis Essence on all of my weapons, and that has certainly helped with the echo damage, and that's probably one of the bigger speed ups I've noticed. I did try just camping Reaver's Ring the whole time for melee, but I was noticing inconsistency, so I do think the Champion's Ring is still a worthwhile add. And the thing I'll leave y'all off here with on this update is this boss definitely takes time to learn this method. This is not something that I got immediately after 1 hour of learning it. I'd say you probably need a full Slayer task worth of KC to really understand all the minutia with all of the kills and whatnot. Because we're so reliant on crit adrenaline, there are going to be points where you just don't crit and it doesn't matter what happens or what you press. You're just going to get some bad rolls, and learning how to improv from that is definitely an important factor of learning this, but it's nothing so overwhelming that people can't learn this. It's just something where you got to put in the work and actually go and do it. But it is a very rewarding method. I have come very close on a couple of occasions on the last task that I did to tying my current PB, if not going faster. If the thing with Time Warp is ever fixed, or maybe there's just some other big brain hybrid strats, or maybe I'll even pull out Tribrid at some point, but not really because the food usage is really annoying. This could probably go into the sub 2s. There's probably some really big brain thing I'm missing that isn't allowing me to do sub 2s right now, but that is the fun of doing these end game methods. You never know the true potential potential of something, and there is always something new to learn in the future. Anyways, I am going to end this update here. Thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.